All right.
So we'll just give it till 11:35.
Okay.
I'll add some minutes to them, or take a minute for the end of class to review that feedback.
Everybody. Well, hi y'all. Which class is this? What's the title, the top title of this course?
I don't know,
No.
what it says. The titles, the titles are always long, so I don't even know the names of my own class, but it's Introduction to Black Social and Cultural Traditions.
That is a name. That is a multi-syllabic, multi-word student loan name, but I dig it. I dig it.
I'm gonna put. I'll pop this around, so you don't have to, grab it, put your signature on there. I'll just give it like 2 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anyone who people did say they tried to come on like an hour ago, so I'm not sure if anyone's trying to come on now.
I think the Facebook post basically said it was Central Time, so.
It did. It did. And so I think maybe one person would try to come on. I'm not sure if it.
I'll keep my eye out. I
Okay.
know it's weird, I'm talking and you can't see me. I'll keep my eye out here and make sure I can let people in.
Okay. And I see Monique typing in our work chat, so that might be her saying that she's on her way to. Yeah, so the Zoom links, she said, am I at the right Zoom? I don't think the Zoom link's working.
But the Zoom is not working.
Yeah. Um,
How did you get on then?
the one that you emailed me.
Is that, why would the link be different?
It says waiting for the host to start meeting. That's what everyone's saying it says.
You know what? Oh, here's somebody else in the waiting room. Oh, here's
Oh,
people.
that's my coworker. Hey, Corinne.
Hey.
Hey.
Okay,
That's
so
my other coworker. Hey, Tiana. Well, this is Milwaukee. I'm the one of the only people besides Tiana and I are the only folks who are not in Milwaukee at Ubuntu. So Corinne is in Milwaukee. Tiana's my coworker as well. Yay, I'm glad y'all came.
I didn't know I didn't know you had all this Milwaukee links when I invited you.
So I didn't know that you all created so a lot of times what's interesting is that a lot of people in academia do invite me, and I think they get scared after a little bit. So I'm like, sure, I'll do it, but it never always pans through. But I was surprised when Monique showed me the graphic. I was like, oh, she was very serious.
Oh, no.
And then and they were like, we're rolling up. So that's Lynetta and Tiana and Corinne. I think Marion, I haven't met her yet, but welcome as well. Oh, that's Sam, that's Juju Bay. Wonderful author. That's Lex, my coworker. Deidre is amazing. So I'm really glad they're joining us in these space because a lot of these people also do practice hoodoo or something along with it. And let me get am I able to share my screen?
Um, I don't know, honestly. I didn't test drive to that level.
Okay.
Oh, you can try and see what happens.
All right, let's see. Share screen. Host is disabled. Can you make me a co-host?
Okay.
Or maybe I should send you my
And
presentation.
share. Wait, hold on, let me see. I think I have to do it in the participant thing. I haven't done this in a while.
Not a problem.
Eight co-host. Yes. Now let's see, that should, I think that works.
I will also, I'm going to email you the link to my presentation as well. Once my computer decides to get things rolling. Oh, you did it. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that there would be.
All right. So I'm going to,
Let's go ahead and start.
yeah.
I'll go and stand in front of the camera and say hello to everyone who's joining us online. I won't be a disembodied voice.
Oh, no. Present view.
Am I centered on this thing? This is my big moment.
Hi,
I, oh, is there back? Feedback? Hello?
we can hear you and see you. Yeah.
Okay, it was just someone else's voice. This is, afro-ecology, no, African Diaspora Studies, we changed our names, 215. We have a special guest today, Hess Love, who will be talking about the hoodoo tradition and her own practice of hoodoo. Hess Love is a cultural worker from Annapolis, Maryland. Their name honors Hester, the last woman in their family enslaved in the US, who was born, loved, enslaved, freed, and buried in Annapolis. Hester's legacy inspires Hess's work in advocacy, afro-ecology, and archival preservation. They are hoodoo-mother-poet, Delmarva woodland steward, and master naturalist. So a warm welcome. And then also welcome our class, my faithful students here, who will be learning along with the rest of the community. Hello, yeah, I think we can get started. Oh, one more thing I have to mention while I'm off camera is that this is sponsored by the department, but also by the Religious Studies program. So I think we can get started now. Are you ready, Hess?
I'm ready.
All right, everyone who's on Zoom, please mute your microphones. Or I'll mute them for you. I'll mute mine too.
All right. And there's still people coming in Zoom. I can see it because I'm now.
Yeah, I'm trying to let these people in.
All right. So welcome. I am going to start with a video. Someone who is on the call, Jujube, is in this video. She is the person who's singing. It's my favorite thing to start the space with. And the reason being, uh-oh.
Oh, we're not hearing.
Can't hear?
It started, but now we're not hearing.
You can't hear?
We can hear you, but I couldn't hear the music.
Let's see.
Let's try again.
Okay.
It might just be a blip.
Okay, can you hear this now? No?
You can do the vocals though.
Can you hear the video or just me?
I can just hear you.
All right, well, we won't share the video. That's interesting. I want to see if I can share.
It was playing, but then it wasn't.
You could hear the video when it was playing?
At first.
Oh, let's try it again. Can you hear?
It started, then it cut off, the audio cut off.
Okay. All right, tech difficulties. Well, we do what we have to do. So, that part was turning the right way. And that is like a mourner's ring shout that we did as a part of the Say Her Name Ancestral Elevation back in 2020 in Baltimore, Maryland for Black women and femmes of all gender expression, cis women, trans, children, little girls who were killed by either police violence, systemic misogynoir, domestic violence, etc. And it's a video that I watch every time I feel turned around. And it's important because a lot of injustice is things that kind of turn us off of our rightful path, that try to knock us off of our square. And so I had that is called turning the right way, essentially, too. And so in turning the right way, it's talking about how ritual hoodoo is ritual. It's more than ritual, but it's the audacity to take a time, a moment, and space to do something other than feed the machine. To do something for yourself, your community, your ancestors, the earth, these entities that exist and will exist hopefully in the future, and or will exist in the future as free beings. And so one of the things I wanted to do is for anyone who kind of rushed in, whether you rushed in class today or you rushed in on the Zoom or you're having a busy day, kind of take a moment to breathe. But first, I'm going to light a candle, and I'm hoping to have like one volunteer, anybody.
They probably want to know what they're volunteering for.
They're gonna have to trust the process. Deidre.
Okay, there's a volunteer online.
Okay. All right. So Deidre, please pick a color.
Orange.
Orange. All right. So I want you to close your eyes. Oh, I want to see the camera. So the reason I'm asking you because what does orange mean? And without Googling it, don't look it up on Google. Don't look at the little Wicca chart. Like close your eyes and think about what orange means. And I say orange means in terms of whenever you see the color orange, where are you? What are you feeling? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. So I definitely connect orange to the chakras. I think it's solar plexus. Also, to me, it's for like I think of oranges, so vitamin C, healing, that kind of thing. I'm probably not on the right track, but also for some reason I know the sun is yellow, but it reminds me of the sun, like sunset.
Yeah, those are all valid. A lot of times when it comes to colors, and this is going to be important in a second because when it comes to colors, are a big part of ritual, and colors mean what they mean to you as an individual and as a culture. So if you look up colors, candle color meanings online, you're probably going to see something from Wicca. You probably got the Scottish color meanings. This probably means nothing to you which might not mean exactly the same things to you as a Black American person or a person of color. And so typically when there's hoodoo, a lot of people say, pick this color, pink for love, green for money. And it's like, pick the color that resonates with you. So orange for healing, orange for wellness, orange for brightness. I'm going to ask for everyone to take a deep breath in and take a deep breath out. Take one more deep breath in and one more deep breath out. And one more deep breath in and a deep breath out. So this candle is for wellness. And that sets the tone of our moments together, and I'll let it burn. So Mojo Workin, Hoodoo for Unjust Times. To be honest with you all, this whole American experience is an unjust time. So that's we could talk about anything in regards to hoodoo and it would be relevant. But we're thinking about hoodoo for Unjust Times because hoodoo as a tradition is a tradition that was created in response to people trying to hold on to themselves while there is perpetual disembodiment and dehumanization and pillaging of the earth and removal. Hoodoo started or it got its beginnings as a tradition that had many influences. And when I say that, I'm not talking about what you find online when someone says hoodoo has Native American and European and African influences. No, when I say influences, I'm talking about the land. I'm talking about the people that came and the memories that they held with them. And I'm talking about what they learned in regard to their experiences. There are European material realities. For example, if someone had a marble in their bone set, or different pieces of pottery that are European inspired, but they're not from European sense of the mystic or the divine. It's of material reality, just the same way that you'll cook a pot of greens in a pot, but just because your pot is made by Le Creuset does not mean that the collard greens are French, if that makes any sense. So today, turning the right way was the candle. We're going to talk about what hoodoo means and looks like. There's no hoodoo without community, systemic injustice as an entity itself, and conjuring local. So I also wanted to introduce myself. Who am I and whose am I, or why you're spending your time with me today? Well, I'm so grateful. My name is Hess Love, also Hess Stinson, which is my government name. I'm from Annapolis. I'm the founder of Chesapeake Conjure Society, which is the first overt hoodoo society of its kind. I'm an anthropologist. I'm also a strategist at Ubuntu Research and Evaluation. Uh, I'm someone who loves where I'm from deeply, and I've had a privilege to know who I am and whose I am. And so whose I am, I'm Lolita's grandchild. I'm someone who belongs deeply to the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm someone who is also my ancestor's baby, as Juju Bay says. So what hoodoo is and what hoodoo ain't. Anybody have, since you all reading Mojo Workin, anyone have your own like definitions of hoodoo, whether these are things that you thought before reading the book or these are things that are afterwards?
Anybody wanna speak? They're very talkative on other times, so I believe if someone had something to say, they would say it. Most of the students said they had never heard of hoodoo before, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it
But
was,
have y'all heard of voodoo though, right?
they heard of voodoo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you heard of voodoo, what do you think, what comes to mind when you hear the word voodoo?
Anybody? Someone said rituals. So you
Okay.
basically hear people who are like in the front two rows, I think. Rituals, I can repeat what people say. Anything else? Power. Power. That's another word. Power, rituals. What else?
Curse.
Curse. All right, power, ritual, curse. Anything else?
Dolls.
Dolls.
Voodoo dolls, yeah.
Yeah, people have
Yeah.
heard of voodoo dolls. Not if you have. Yeah. So anything else? We can open this to the online people too.
I said healing and protection in the chat.
Healing and protection. Sorry, I'm not like attending the chat really. Sorry. Healing and protection. Curses, power, rituals.
Got it. Yeah. Chantel?
Both voodoo and hoodoo are, to me, the way I understand it, is a deep connection to nature and its cycles. And yeah, there's ritual deeply involved in it. And it's used as a tool of resistance. I've been talking a lot to people about, or like thinking a lot during this like Hoodoo Heritage Month about how being connected to nature is like a form of resistance. And like someone said in the chat, it's a form of liberation too.
Definitely. Thank you. Mambo Elizabeth.
Hi. I often explain to people who ask me what it is that it's our three M's, our magical, our medical, and our mundane. in African and African American cosmology, there's no separation. All of these things are one. So you can't separate your spiritual life from your physical health. And the acknowledgement and the understanding of the power of the elements, nature, and the things that it creates. So that to me, there's a lot of sociological terms and things like that, but how I make that resonate with me, where it is my lifestyle, my religion, my tradition, because it touches every aspect of who I am, my ancestries, and my life here and my life in other iterations.
Yeah, hoodoo is all of those things, and hoodoo is also an opportunity to be very curious. There can be answers that kind of are veering down a different direction, but there's no wrong way to be respectfully curious. So don't feel like you have to, especially for the students, say something that is going to make us go, or snap or clap. Just be honest in your curiosity, because hoodoo is a perpetual conversation between us and each other, between us and the environment, our ancestors, between us and the past, and between us and the future, too. So, what hoodoo is, it is a religion, a tradition, an heirloom, a culture, a people, life. And so often in the United States, especially, because a lot of anthropologists like to name things a certain way because it makes it easier for them to categorize it, things will be called the same name in multiple places, even when that's not its name. So for a lot of people, they might have done things that are ritualistic, like have a place in their home where there's pictures of their dearly departed. There might be flowers, there might be a candle. Maybe someone never called it an altar, but that's an altar. Some people might remember their grandparents teaching them which plants to use when they're ill, and they never said root working, but that's root working. Some people may never have understood the dances, especially the circular ones, especially catching the spirit in church, especially the way that house music catches people. And they never said it was hoodoo, but that's what it is. Some people might have never said that collard greens and black eyed peas on New Year's is hoodoo, but that's what it is. And so hoodoo is a tradition that fought for a long time to hold its name, the name that it has. But even if you do not call it that, it's still that. And so often anthropologists especially would say voodoo because to them, everything mystical that Black people do is voodoo. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about hoodoo, candomblé, lukumi, voodoo, um, asheshe, odinani, any of those things. All of that to them is voodoo. And that's not your fault if that's how you've known it or labeled it. But part of the magic of conjuring is being able to declare itself as one existing and two having a rightful name that it fights for, to be the definer and the defined at the same time. So what hoodoo is, what hoodoo looks like. Anyone can tell me what they think a hoodoo practitioner looks like. And don't cheat and look at the picture of Toya, even though I'm sure like she is a perfect example of a hoodoo in ritual. We typically wear white. We have our own adornments. She's phenomenal for adorning herself. We have our own materials. But what does a hoodoo or a hoodoo practitioner, as you understand the phenomena, look like to you?
Are you asking the students or everybody?
Everybody is open.
I'm thinking about a Black person, but I'm also thinking about an elder person. I feel like they're film presenting, but that could be a misconception on my own part. So wise Black women who've been in the world and know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Would you look like that? Deirdre?
I was just gonna say, like, it looks like, again, I agree, Black women, but there are men too. But it looks like like the gardeners and the herbalists and the tincture makers and the oil makers and just the healers, you know what I mean? So it looks like all of us have grabbed some of those traditions, so it's in all of us, so it looks like all of us to me.
Yeah. I was going to ask everyone whether you are on Zoom to turn your camera on and look at yourself, or if you're in person to turn the self-facing or front-facing camera on and look at yourself, because that is what a hoodoo practitioner looks like. That's exactly what a hoodoo practitioner looks like. Now, the white cloth, the ritual is beautiful and we do it, but it's a lived practice that stretches across our everyday. And there's no right or wrong way to look, and you're not more authentic if you have a head wrap or all white, or if you have a mojo bag around you or what have you. You look the way that you look, and that is valid. That is what a hoodoo practitioner looks like. You, your skin, your eyes, your hair, which you chose to put on today in order to express yourself. That is what hoodoo looks like. So typically, when I talk to classes, right? And I used to come in I come in my regular clothes and they're like, oh, kind of disappointed because I think they expected someone who is older, which I pray to be one day soon. Maybe I would have a cane and these big necklaces and a chicken bone around my neck and a big old head wrap and like all these garbs. And honestly, that is one of my goals when I become older and become like a mystic crone, but that's not what I look like. And so typically I wear a head wrap to just kind of help people get into the experience or the aesthetic experience of like what a hoodoo is. But truthfully, this is not needed. So I take it off because this is what a hoodoo person looks like with kinky twists, with bun, with the braids, and I'm still the same hoodoo practitioner I was when I had this head wrap on. You are still the same person you are when you do hoodoo, regardless of what you're looking like. And typically, that's how hoodoo has survived. It does not always have a uniform. And so during times and moments in history where it was suppressed and people were literally punished for practicing hoodoo, whether they in Virginia were punished for doing root working where it was outlawed, whether they were punished for gathering, whether they were punished for suspicion of magic and especially throughout South Carolina. Having your everyday garb and your everyday wear was also a form of protection from punishment. As of now, we have the full autonomy, thankfully, to choose what we're going to wear. For the most part, there's still systemic issues. It doesn't really matter, but we learned that it doesn't matter what we wear. Anti-Blackness and all systemic issues are going to still happen, right? But for the most part, we have the autonomy to wear what we want to wear without feeling like I'm going to automatically get harassed if I walk down the street in my all whites. We might get looked at, but we may not get mistreated. And so with that, I want to talk about what hoodoo ain't. Hoodoo ain't voodoo. Voodoo is a beautiful, beautiful tradition. It has a lot of its origins in Benin. There's a voodoo priestess, Mambo Liz, who's on here. There's Lawa, which is the name of their pantheons, their deities. But hoodoo and voodoo are each its own autonomous traditions that are also a part of the African diaspora religious traditions. There's no need to compare the two unless you're trying to tease out the times in your mind where someone might have been thinking about hoodoo but calling it voodoo. But there's no comparison. There's no one that's lesser, right? And some people say, oh, hoodoo comes from voodoo as if like it's a parent-child relationship, and like that's not true. Both of them exist from different ethnic groups of people, from different geographical and ecological realities. They could not be the same thing. They're more like cousins than parent and child. But hoodoo ain't, it's not a Orisha tradition. The Orisha traditions are beautiful, right? And I don't know any African traditional religion and African diaspora religion that isn't absolutely aesthetically beautiful. But we don't have the Orishas. We don't have Oshun with all her loveliness or Ishu with all his cleverness. We don't have any of that in hoodoo. Orishas are, especially in Lukumi, Asheshe, Candomblé, and other traditions that are Orisha traditions, the name of the pantheon of divinities. And that's not what hoodoo is either. It's also a separate tradition than hoodoo. What hoodoo is, hoodoo was not a lesser magic. It's not a lesser thing than any other tradition. And a lot of people often believe that it is because we don't have a name for our pantheon for divinities all the time. For example, we might have Simbi, we might have the Black Man at the Crossroads, we might have the river just being the river, we might have Harriet Tubman being an elevated ancestor, but our pantheon is not necessarily labeled anything. And a lot of times that's because of protection, because of the different ways that hoodoo as a tradition has been suppressed systemically. And so we call a thing, beloved. The river is the river. The beach is the beach. Harriet Tubman is Harriet Tubman. The Black Man at the Crossroads. He was wearing all black and he was a black man at the crossroads. So he was the Black Man at the crossroads. Like we call it just like that. It is what it is, right? And it has connections to one of the parent traditions, which is the Bakongo, who often also called things what they were. The river was often just the river. The sun was often the sun. But it's your relationship with those things that made it mean something. And the beautiful thing about folklore is that it helps us give us more beautiful language and words to kind of sensorially get into feeling the appreciation and the magic of each entity. But hoodoo sometimes demands something different. It demands that you see the magic in the mundane as well. I want to give a chance for like some intentional silence, but also for any questions that, for a question that might have bubbled up while we were talking.
Anyone have any questions? Put the microphone on for the class. No questions so far? All right. My class has not got questions so far. They just drank it all in. Anyone online with a question?
I'm having a wondering about like not having orishas or not like having sensationalized type language and like finding the magic in the mundane. I don't know. I I don't know what my wondering is, but I guess like if there is no like thing, place, or like tangible to ground the thing, like what are those other anchors?
Mm. It's the lived experience and then like taking your brain and making things related. And it's hard because like there's often a question people ask, what makes hoodoo hoodoo? So when we say you can use the Bible, but you don't have to, they're like, well, how is it hoodoo without the Bible? Like what actually makes it what it is? And it's one of those things where this is why you are born into why it's an ethno religion. You're born into it ethnically. It is a lived experience of a certain people on a certain place. And that is super broad. But what makes it magic or what it protects it means that if you do not have this lived experience of being a certain people from a certain place, you can do all the rituals you want, but it still would not be hoodoo. And that becomes frustrating for people who are trying to reclaim it because you're like, how do I know what I'm doing is hoodoo at all? So typically, like, there's no name for our pantheon. We're just now starting to reach back and pull some of the names for certain things. But it's kind of in the lived experience. So a lot of times that's why people will say, well, my grandmother didn't call it hoodoo, but now that I think about it, I recognize some things and she didn't call it, and some people insist on it being unnamed. And we're calling it hoodoo. We're calling the thing as a name to give people an anchoring of this belongs here. So once you start saying this is hoodoo, you can say, hey, the Black Man at the Crossroads part and the Robert Johnson at the Crossroads with his guitar, that's a hoodoo story. Black Eyed Peas and Collard Greens is a hoodoo story. The way Black churches shout in a way that no other ethnic group shouts in church, and you're like, that is something beyond Christian. That is a hoodoo phenomena, right? When we think about the instances of how many people who were enslaved, many women especially, were poisoning their enslavers with particular knowledge of plants, that is a hoodoo phenomenon. And so like that anchor is the name. But for a long time, for a very long time, it has been unanchored because for many people it went unnamed in their family, or they just called it roots or root work or conjuring, or sometimes they just straight up called it voodoo. And so that's the thing, like that's the work of this current generation of what contemporary hoodoo is helping people find a way to anchor something that has been systemically suppressed for so long and so systemically suppressed for so long that people don't even realize they've done it because it's been a phenomenon that's been allowed to live in their brains, in their bodies, in their home, in their spirit, unnamed for so long, too. Go to the next one. So hoodoo requires community. That's also one of the other anchorings. You can do ritual and learn things by yourself, but the way to find out, does this stuff work? And am I sure I'm just not crazy and I made that stuff up and it was happenstance, is to do it with other people. Take the information that you learn, take the things that you think, and do it in this container with other folks that you can see, that you can smell, that you can hear. I'm not saying that you can taste, that's going in a whole different direction, right? But you can speak to, that you can see what they're wearing, that you can hear, look at their body language as well. It takes community to really feel like I am not out of my mind for feeling like I did this thing and I got what I wanted. I can do it, repeat it like science, and it keeps doing the same thing, whether no matter how long or short it takes. It takes community to do the experimentation of hoodoo. It takes community to kind of do the science of hoodoo. It absolutely takes community to do the science of hoodoo to see these are your peer reviewers, and they're going to see if this stuff works with you. It takes community to teach people about hoodoo. Hoodoo as a cultural phenomenon. Like you weren't just born and said, I'm gonna have I'm gonna have some pot liquor, it's gonna make me well. Someone did that for you, a grandmother, an auntie, a grandfather. You weren't just born and said, um, I'm going to put this water and this fire, this light next to a picture of my dearly departed or something. You were taught that by someone. It takes people to teach people. And so it takes hoodoo, it takes people to teach people about hoodoo. It took hoodoo to create Hoodoo Heritage Month, which it is right now, October. That was created in 2019 by Mama Rue and the Welcome to Dakinga Collective in Chicago. And it's a way of conjuring because you're declaring a time and space and you're saying this thing is going to exist now that I say so. That's conjuring. And so Hoodoo Heritage Month exists because Mama Rue and the other folks up in Chicago were like, this thing exists because now we say so. It's a community to do that because she couldn't have just said it by herself and everyone didn't participate. It wouldn't have been Hoodoo Heritage Month. It took all of us participating for years, now in its fifth year, to make it a celebration. It's a community to revive All Saints Day, this is a picture from. It's us in a cemetery. We were cleaning, we were celebrating, we were communing, we had an altar space. Typically, All Saints Day is seen as a very Catholic holiday, and places that did once have a high Catholic population, like Maryland, where I'm from, Louisiana, a lot of people were able to kind of syncretize or cover their traditions under the Catholicism, because Catholicism lets a little bit of like flexibility with things, right? So you have All Saints Day under Catholicism, and Black people in Louisiana, in Annapolis, Maryland, were cleaning up the cemeteries, were talking about their ancestors and their dead, and had this own, it became its own thing, this own particular Black thing, the way that the Black church is also its own particular thing. And so what we did at Chesapeake Conscious Society is we looked up the history of All Saints Day. And we're like, this is a holiday. We could look at the subtext of what was not being explicitly said and saying they were doing a little hoodoo here, just under, they were just doing it under the guise of the church so they wouldn't be persecuted. So what we did as a declaration to say like hoodoo can stand on its own and we can be safe to do it, is we started having All Saints Day the hoodoo way, as overtly and explicitly and exclusively a hoodoo celebration in Baltimore, Maryland, and Annapolis, Maryland too. So people are welcome to bring their traditions, but there is no Christian cover. Hold on a second. It's a community. It's a community to do that. And also it's a community to make you real. Nobody created you by your they self. It took your parents, it took your grandparents, it took your great grandparents, your great greats until you have like 800 ancestors. It took millennia of community and decisions to make you real. And you are what hoodoo is, a living, breathing experience. So the question. So is hoodoo a solitary practice? And I think with all the videos playing all at once, obviously no. There are moments of solitude in this tradition. Just like many traditions, you need to have those moments of solitude. And when I say solitude, I'm not just talking, well, I had some me time, because you can have me time and watch TV. You could have me time and go get a pedicure. You can have me time and play video games. Me time is important, but it's not solitude. Solitude is when you are really by yourself. It is just you and the air and the room and the walls, and there is nothing going on. And you have to sit with your own. And hoodoo is a practice that you should have moments of solitude so you can gain some clarity and know who you are and what you think. But it's not necessarily a tradition that is only created by people who hold solitary practices. So, for instance, Wicca is a tradition that they do have community, but for the most part, they promote a solitary practice. You're kind of by yourself. And you can come to talk to each other, but you're by yourself. With hoodoo, it's not a solitary practice because in order to get here, you had to come through community. In order to learn the culture, you had to learn it from your family, your community. In order to know what works ritually and to actually say, I'm not out my mind. People saw me do it. They saw what happened. It's peer reviewed and tested. It's elder reviewed and tested. This is real. It is a communal practice, but it doesn't mean that you can't do things by yourself. There are often rituals that you do need to do by yourself, but it's not an all by yourself all the time thing. And so often in kind of the aesthetics or the archives of the conjure woman and the root worker, they paint this person as someone who lives far off in the woods. You got to walk 5 miles across the river and then go up a hill, and then like they live in a cabin by themselves, and that's what a root worker is or a conjure person is. And it's not sometimes, but sometimes that just so happened to be a conjure person or a root worker that was either extremely introverted or they might have been socially ostracized. So many times, your conjure person, your root worker might be your neighbor. It might have been your grandmother, and she might not have been, you know, it might have been people who has syncretic traditions at being at church and being a hoodoo. Sometimes your conjure person could be your coworker, could be someone that you meet on the street. So, like, having to peel back or kind of unpack the idea of like a real person is someone who lives isolated from the rest of the world and the rest of the community. It's like not always. When someone lives isolated, they're making that decision to do that for themselves. It's not because they have to do it in order to be a real hoodoo. So I wanted to show you some Instagram reels of hoodoo in a communal practice. So this is at a Afro-Chesapeake feast in honor of ancestor James Hemmings, and everyone was cooking. And before we sat down and had the food, you see them in the kitchen. They're making biscuits, they're making soups, they're making everything. And a lot of times, the conjuring, the hoodoo does happen in the kitchen. And for so many times, people do say collard greens and black eyed peas for hoodoo because I think it's the most, it's the dish that we associate the most with the concept of good luck or wellness. But the whole concept of Black Americans having our own unique cuisine is hoodoo, to conjure a whole food way out of learning what vegetables and things here on the land, using a few vegetables from your homeland, taking, I don't want to keep saying taking scraps, right? But using what's provided, even if it's not nourishing and even if it's not something that is meant to nourish you, and saying, I'm going to turn it into something that will nourish me, right? And then creating rich, like creating recipes and memories that is conjuration. Our whole Black American foodways is hoodoo and not.
Yes, I am sorry to interrupt you, but somebody's mic is on, and so online we can't really,
Thank
I
you,
mean, it's like being
sister. Yeah,
interrupted.
yeah, I was gonna concur that.
Okay. Is there, Anika, can you see that?
I'm trying to look and see whose mic is on and see if I can like mute everybody or something.
They
I can do
just
that.
muted it.
Okay.
Now you need to unmute.
So, what's the last thing you all heard me say clearly?
You,
Child, it had been a minute.
Well, you were talking about the conjuring happening in the kitchen and conjuring food ways, and that's the last kind of decisive kind of comment that I got.
Wow. Okay. I'm glad we got space for questions. My bad, y'all. So conjuring in the kitchen. I was saying a lot of times when people are making people aware of hoodoo, we talk about black eyed peas and collard greens because it's one of those dishes that is the most overtly connected to an idea of good luck or anything else, right? Some people might always also mention like don't eat spaghetti from anybody, and then for those who know, you know, right? But I was saying that the fact that Black Americans have a food way, we have a distinct cuisine itself is conjuration, is hoodoo. To take the foods, the natural plants that live in this world and the way that you had to learn new plants, not only that are native to here, but even European, well, I'm not going to call them European, but plants that are native to the continent now known as Europe, right? And then also a few plants that are from West Africa, especially, to take all these plants together to experiment to figure out what this tastes like, what this look like, what's gonna kill me, what's gonna make me well, what can I take a little bit of, right? To take not, I don't want to say scraps, but to take what's given to you, especially when what's given to you was not meant to nourish you. It was just meant to keep you alive, just this enough, and to take it and say, I'm gonna make it not only nourish me, but I'm gonna make it keep me alive so that my next generation can be alive, so that they can be alive. And then we have these recipes and these stories. That itself is hoodoo and conjuration. It's making something out of where you're at right now. And so if anyone's looking for an anchor point about what hoodoo is, and you need a tangible anchor, food. Black American food. And a good book for that is The Cooking Gene by Michael Twitty. There's also a lot of other books, High on the Hog. There's like of chicken legs and power in the kitchen. There's so many things, but The Cooking Gene by Michael Twitty is a wonderful book to talk about the magic, more or less, of what it meant to create a cuisine. And so that's why I showed the video of us cooking food, because that is hoodoo, and cooking specific food to that are Black American food to our area is hoodoo. The next video I'm going to show you is us in the cemetery dancing at All Saints Day as well, and this being a communal expression of ancestral joy and ritualistic joy. So dance is also hoodoo, to take your body and to make it say something without words, to take your body and make it say something without words in response to the drum, in response to music, in response to sound, to keep moving and you inspire other people to move and you didn't tell them to move. They just move because you move. That's magic. And there is also Katrina Hazzard-Donald. She's a dance scholar. She wrote, I believe, Jukin before she wrote Mojo Workin. And Jukin is all about Black American dance ways, and that being a tangible, embodied expression of hoodoo, how we move, not only as an ancestral remembrance, but also in relation to, for lack of a better term, the vibrations, the energy of this place. Because if you notice, even in the United States of America, different cities have different dances. And it's not just the people, there's also kind of some type of thing that the earth commands of you. If anyone's into footwork, you look at even Baltimore and DC have different footwork. Chicago has different footwork. Milwaukee has different footwork. New York has footwork. Oakland has footwork. And while they're related, you can tell this is a particular practice where they're kind of being culturally instructed by not only each other, but there is some type of energetic movement that's saying, now move your feet and your ankles like this. So movement is also hoodoo. This next one is from that same feast from the first video, but it's also kind of a really sweet and tender, like fire ritual.
Can you share a little bit about the fire ritual, the intentions of that?
So fire is the ultimate cleanser. Like I think it's going neck and neck with salt. I'm gonna just be honest with you. Between fire and salt, I don't know which you couldn't get rid of with both of those things, but fire is it's the ultimate cleanser. And so when you're using fire in something, if you're not inviting, like calling something there or kind of giving yourself a visual way to be invited into the ritual. It's an invitation. You are also releasing something because fire burns things up. It changes the matter of it. It changes the shape of it. It turns it into debris and ruins and remains, and it changes the very nature of the thing. And so typically there in that fire, that was release, what people were letting go of, what they're going to let get burnt up in the fire, and the remains of the situation and what's going to actually turn into air at that point. Fire and air being related in terms of release, and release being different than cleansing, which water does, and then grounding, which the earth does as well too. Um, but the fire, that way, it's like it's the ultimate cleanser. And if you need to release something, fire. I'm not saying do Lisa Left Eye Lopez fire, because you could go to jail, but I'm saying you could take something, a little bonfire, put a note about what it's troubling you, fold it up away from you, especially if something you want to get away. Like if you're gonna fold it this way, not this way, and pop that thing in the fire. You can outside write out something on a little piece of paper and in a fire safe dish, burn it up. Typically when people are white sage, I don't use white sage because that belongs to the indigenous people of the Southwest Plains. That's their own thing. But when you're burning any other herb, whether it's rosemary, whether that's bone set, whether that's any other thing, um, by using fire, you're releasing the phytochemical compounds in there so it can do what it does to cleanse the space, to invite the space. Like it's always release in any way that you shake it. Okay, and this video is All Saints Day, not All Saints Day, Juneteenth, which I just happen to miss every year for some reason, for Chesapeake Conscious Society. All these are Chesapeake Conscious Society events. And this one is Juneteenth, and this was after libations, altar, ring shout, all of that. So what that video is showing is hoodoo being a place. That place where that video is taking place is the inner harbor of Baltimore. Baltimore was a slave port. The inner harbor of Baltimore was a slave port where they were taking people, Africans that they trafficked, and even indigenous people that they trafficked from the islands and taking them up to what we now know as the United States of America. It's one of the many ports. It's the place where the Key Bridge collapsed. For anyone who's needing like a local, that's where the Key Bridge collapsed recently within the past year. It's one of the ports that was being threatened to be locked down when we had that scare about a week or so ago. It was one of the major imports that made Maryland were human beings. And one of the major exports was iron. Maryland was one of the biggest pig iron suppliers to the world at like the early 1800s, for example. And the iron was being smelted, molded, all of that by Black people, and Black people, most of them being enslaved. And so there is a Juneteenth celebration there at the Inner Harbor because that is one of the first sites of Maryland that many of our Chesapeake ancestors saw. It's like Baltimore City is the biggest city in the Chesapeake Bay. It's one of the first places a lot of people touched of this land. And a lot of people do come from the Chesapeake area. If you go back far enough in your genealogy, you'll find someone either from Virginia or Maryland. The English, when they settled this would turn into Virginia or Maryland, did so in the Chesapeake area. And so Baltimore is one of those sites where the Baltimore Inner Harbor is one of those sites where we look at the sky, we look at the water, you're looking at the same sky and the same water. that they saw. Granted, the water dirty right now. I would not recommend going in that water, but it's the same body of water. Hoodoo being a place. The rituals being done there being a place, especially for Juneteenth. Even though Juneteenth is a Texan holiday, June 19th that started in Galveston, Texas, we as a nation celebrate it, but also should remember that as a Texan holiday and look into your own emancipation dates for your state. So for Maryland, our Emancipation Day happens to be November 1st, which is also All Saints Day, but we celebrate in the warmth because November 1st is cold, at the Inner Harbor in solidarity with our Texan siblings and everything too. And also as another reason to just say, I remember, the people here named and unnamed. How good are we going down? We in. All right. So when it comes to hoodoo, the only way to know for sure is to test it out. So hoodoo invites curiosity with common sense. It invites curiosity with common sense, meaning don't leave an unattended candle, right? But if you're like, I wonder if I add this thing to this thing that feel like they're related, what would happen? It invites curiosity, and don't be afraid to be skeptical. If someone's telling you to blow cinnamon in your house for Hoodoo Heritage Month, you can ask them, why cinnamon? What is it about? Why are you telling me to blow cinnamon? Well, it's for money. Well, what makes it about for money? Well, that's what folks say. Well, why folks say that? You know the chemical compounds? Ask people questions. Now, do I know the chemical compounds in cinnamon? No, I know it has some flavonoids that bring sweetness, and people associate sweetness with money, but that's all I got for you. But some other scientists might give you an answer. Be skeptical, ask questions. If people are saying, I don't hear my ancestors, that's okay. Ask other people, how do you hear your ancestors? Because it's not always audience, not always clairaudience or clairsentient, which is knowing, or any other kind of clair, which is seeing, whatever. Sometimes there are other ways that people see or hear their ancestors through signs. So ask people. The only way to know for sure is to test it. That's the best advice I can give you about hoodoo, but then also it's curiosity with common sense, meaning use your sense to experiment within sense. And then also when you're learning things and you're making ritual, whether you're making your own rituals or you're doing what's been passed down or taught to you, common sense would say, let me not do something that I don't know how to undo or that I couldn't figure out how to undo. And that's why community is important, because it gives you an anchoring to test things out with other folks who might be like, I don't think you should do that. Or that's actually pretty good. Or, oh, I see what you're doing. Why don't you try this? Or you messed up. All right, let's figure out how to get you out of this. Right? That's why community is so important in hoodoo. So my next question, because this is Hoodoo and Unjust Times, and we just went through Hoodoo 101, which you need to know about all that stuff, right? Is what makes this place, and I say place, I mean this country, this nation, sick? And what is it about this place that tries to kill us? And this is me asking you a question.
Anybody answer? Anybody? Thought?
White supremacy and anti-blackness for 200 Alex, please.
Yes, 200 times 2, that's 400.
So I had taken a class in the spring about it was called Race in the Age of Exploration. I told her during the class that it should probably be colonization, not exploration. But I learned that a lot of the things that were cloaked in Christianity, it was really tied to white supremacy. And so that meant the religion, also capitalism. So that's what there's I can't think of his name right now, but he does the title of his book is Black Marxism. He also ties all that together. And basically that's why this place makes us sick, because we were meant to be used as resources. It's not for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? What makes this place sick? What is it about us, this place that tries to kill us? Why is it that, like Lucille Clifton says, we have to tell each other to come celebrate with me, that every day something has tried to kill me and failed? And it's also a good time for a pause because it might come up as well. So, what makes us play sick? All the things that Corinne and Deidre mentioned, all of those things, and all the things that those things birth, and how those things birth, and they get together and it's incestuous and they build new stuff that's really sick and insidious. All like what makes these places sick at the end of the day is anti-Blackness, is colonization, is transphobia, is a whole lot of things. And that also goes to dehumanization, to not valuing human life. It's when it doesn't look like you, or even when it does look like you, to try to create some reason why you should exist and they shouldn't, why you should be happy and they shouldn't, why you should drink clean water and they shouldn't. It's what makes this place sick is dehumanization, and hoodoo is a tradition that is responsive to that. So it says it's not silly to do love working, because especially if you have anything that this world tries to say you're unworthy of love, whether that is brown or black skin, whether that is fatness, whether that is less money, whether that's disability, whether that's anything. It's saying it's more than okay to ask for love. It's more than okay to petition for it, to demand it, to call it to you. Because what makes this place sick and what tries to kill us about it is that it tries to make sure, it tries its best. It doesn't always work, but it tries its best to make sure that we question if we are loved and wanted or not, and what love looks like. And it's hard to feel loved when you are under-resourced. It's hard to feel loved when you are oppressed. It's hard to feel love when you are dehumanized. It's hard to feel love when people were trained to not love somebody who looks like you, who talks like you, who thinks like you, who asks difficult questions, who insist on being difficult for change. And Hoodoo says that's okay. It's not okay the world does it to you, but it's okay to ask for love. So if you want to do this love work, go ahead and do it. What makes this place sick? We don't feel protected. So many things tell us that we're not protected, whether it's little girls getting shot in their sleep by the police, whether it's intimate partner violence, whether it's climate disaster hurting poor people first and the most. And so Hoodoo says you are not weak for saying that you are vulnerable. It's okay to petition for protection. More than okay, you deserve it, it's your right, along with being loved. So what makes this place sick, and what is it about this place that kills us? It warps what we think of success and what it means to be a worthy person, someone who's done their work, someone who's doing enough, someone who's right on the right path. So it says, whatever you think success is, whether that's what it actually is or not, it's okay to ask for it, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to feel human again. So what makes us place sick? What makes this place sick is all the ways it tries to deny us the simplest things of belonging, of connection, of being wanted, of being needed, of being happy, of being nourished, of being able to move, of being able to do anything. And Hoodoo says that's, that this is daggone unfair. So you find another way to get it. It's about having the audacity to find other solutions and other ways of reclaiming, even if it's a technology outside of what they would give you too. So conjuring local. Hoodoo.
Let me have like a quick interruption that we're like 10 minutes from the end of our
I'm gonna
time.
hurry it up. Yep, I'm gonna hurry this up because I have a couple things. So conjure local. Hoodoo is a very domestic tradition. It's very much who you see, who you're next to, who you're around, who you have access to, whatever. Now, whether you're trying to bless them or cross them up, it's about who's next to you, who your people, who you like and who you don't like, but it's around you. Even years ago, you might have heard someone say, we're going to hex Trump, and they were living in New York. And it's like, how are you going to hex Trump? You don't even know where he at. You don't know where he about to step. You don't know what he about to eat. Okay, our ancestors who poisoned their enslavers, they know where they slept, where they eat, what time they ate, where their children was at, when they went to the in town, and all of that. Hoodoo conjure is a very local phenomenon. So when people are saying, "What can I do to fix the world?" You fix it from your little corner of the world. And to that, there's three things. So for horrible,
like click come on.
oh,
There you go. Oh, butterfly friend.
Oh, that's my voice. I thought it was one of y'all. Never mind.
All right, for the mugwort.
So Conjure Local, we were creating a foot bath here. And in order to like help our community kind of feel a little less heavy and bogged down, we were creating a bath here. So Conjure Local looks like caring for people in your community, but also it could look like crossing folks up who've done unjust things for you. So typically for horrible neighbors, people use rituals that involve hot pepper as both a protector from their house and an irritant for other people. For bigots, a lot of people use a pen, a paper, and freezer. And they like, I'm gonna keep you right in your little dusty place, and you're gonna stay there. And then typically the best way to know whether freezer work has worked is if you open that freezer and you see that paper and that thing, and you like, I don't even know who in there. Exactly. That's how you know it works. For clarity, rosemary under your pillow and clean under your bed. And clean under your bed. That's like the most thing. A lot of times, our most clarity comes from being well rested and rejuvenating ourselves. And you can't do that if you're not dreaming and sleeping well. So now it's time for questions. Also, please do, we have 10 minutes. Please do ask questions. I know we have probably 8 minutes now because I used the whole 2 to swallow up the air. But does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? I have the audio on, so. Yeah.
And don't be shy. There is no silly question.
Anybody? No questions?
Hess, I had asked a question earlier in the chat. First of all, thank you so much for this labor. And I know that we on the digital side of things are just full with the knowledge that you shared. So thank you. I'd asked a question in the chat and I think I got my answer, but just kind of want to hear more if you have it about whether or not you know of there being a difference between concepts of conjure and concepts of hoodoo. So in my lineage, like I hear people self-identify as conjure woman, and not maybe hoodoo practitioner. And just want to be intentional about, I'm just trying to learn more about if there is separate tradition there.
No, the concept of conjure is not separate from hoodoo, but also conjuration is not exclusive to hoodoo. So conjuration is a word and it means to make something exist that did not exist before with the help of an entity. If you are a conjure woman, you are making things with things. You're making things that did not exist and making realities that did not exist now. If you're a root worker, you're collaborating with plants. If you're two-headed, you're working with spirits. If you're a medium, you're listening to spirits. So like conjuration and a conjure woman is like a title and within the phenomena of hoodoo. It's not separate, but also conjuration and root working are two phenomenons or explanations that are not exclusive to hoodoo. So you have people who make things exist and work with plants in voodoo. You even have people who make things exist and work with plants in let me not give the Wicca people a hard time, but Wicca too, right? You have that, but yeah, it's not separate. It's one of the titles that we have.
In the chat, I kind of said that like the new age spiritualists, they call it manifestation. Do you think that's accurate?
It's different. So manifestation is like the etymology of that is to reveal what's there. So like you ever heard of a ship's manifest? It's like you can't see what's in the ship, but you see this paper that has a whole list of what's there. When you're manifesting something, you're taking what already is there, what already exists, and reveal it to the top. So like if you're saying, I want to be more confident, right? And you're already confident. You're taking it there, but you're whatever's laying on top of it and trying to suffocate it, you're moving it out the way so it can come to the top. Versus if you're saying, look, I'm trying to be famous and you ain't famous at all, that's conjuration. That's making something exist that doesn't exist.
Thank you.
Well, I got what I needed to get.
Any other questions online, or here's a student with a question.
Absolutely.
Can you say it loud or I can repeat it?
So she said like October's hoodoo month. She's talking about someone like named Mama Real.
So the student wants to know about Hoodoo Month, like happens during it, or?
I mean, like, she said.
And Mama Ruth started it, you said?
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Yeah,
You want to know more about
no.
Mama Ru?
Yes.
Okay. Mama Ru used to be online, but she's not. She's from Chicago and she started it. It's Mama Ru, like Rue, and it's spelled like that. If you Google her, like if you Google Mama Ru Hoodoo, you can hear her voice because she has a beautiful podcast. She doesn't do it anymore, but it's still available. She's from Chicago. She calls herself a pre-elder. She started a collective called Walking the Dekinga, and they declared October as Hoodoo Heritage Month. And so what makes it Hoodoo Heritage Month, it's a month long of like celebration. We have holiday, so it starts with the first day and it ends after the last day with All Saints Day. We have Black Man at the Crossroads Day, we have Nat Turner Day, where we do our ritual, we educate, we make awareness, and typically the awareness is working to help push against demonization or prejudice against the tradition. If we can make you aware and we can make you educated, you can learn more and then start to shift your idea of what it is, especially awareness that this is a living tradition too, that people still do this today, and people have never stopped. It's just that we have now the space to move about the cabin, as you say, to do it overtly, and be proud of that as well. But if you Google Hoodoo Heritage Month, if you type in Hoodoo Heritage Month on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, if you Google it, you'll find events, you'll find information. Not all of it's correct, but you will find information. You'll find people. It's a whole phenomenon as well. And so just those words will open up so many things. But at the end of the day, what it will always do is point you to the direction of living current Hoodoo practitioners.
Another question, with Carlene Carey online.
Thank you for such an awesome presentation. I really enjoyed myself. One of the questions I have is about ancestral practices. Sometimes what happens is I don't necessarily feel my ancestors' presence unless I'm doing something they would do, like sewing or gardening. And then it feels very like, okay, my grandma's here. That's awesome. But other practices, I just feel like might not necessarily be resonant for me the way that sewing and cooking are. Is there like let me phrase this well. Is that something that you've observed in your teaching and in your practice within the Hoodoo community, that there are certain practices that are more resonant for some folks than others?
Yeah, that's bodily memory. That's epigenetic memory. That's the whole idea when people say trauma is generational, but so are your gifts. Like that's that. That's your ancestors. Like this is how, like you have this movement where you do certain things a certain way. Like it's why in a ring shout, there are certain parts of each dance that might be washing clothes on the washing tub or cooking or whatever you're doing, and it's meant to kind of have this embodiment of your ancestor. It's like your own personal masquerade where you're like, if I do this thing, you'll come and you'll talk to me. And that's something that your blood is telling you to do. Like that's exactly what that is. And that's valid. And I think that's a blessing that you identified that, because there are some people who are still trying to search through like, which activity can I hear you in? But that's in your blood. There might be someone who really loved to have done that, or they were particularly skilled, and that confidence is pushing through to you, and they feel the most confident in expressing themselves that way. It's like how some folks communicate with food. To let me feed you. That could be that as well. That's valid. And I think that's awesome that you've identified these are two things, not just one, two things that I can do to feel connected, but not just to feel connected, but it's things that are also nourishing to you, to make food, to nourish yourself, to make things, to create something, whether it's a pillow or a shirt. I think that's cool.
Thank you so much, Hess. I think that all of us really appreciate it. I mean, you can't see me even though I'm looking over at the camera as if you can, but everyone's really appreciated all the wisdom and knowledge you shared with us today, everyone here in class and online. We had so much presentation. We didn't have as much time for for a back and forth discussion at the end as I would have liked, but I think that you guys, yeah, you got a good sense of hoodoo practice now and practitioners. So we're really grateful for you being willing to come and share with us, and also for everyone online letting us open it up like this. So I really appreciate it. And I will share the link to this after our recording is done.
Thank you. And yes, please screenshot, take a picture of this, because sometimes lots of information takes a lot of time to settle. So it could be tomorrow or next month. If you have a question, please do not hesitate to reach out.
All right, thank you. And my students are eager to go to their next class or lunch. So thank you guys.
Time with me, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone online.
Thank you. Is it possible
Thank
to
you.
share the links for the classes at Big Liz Conjure when we share the
Thank you.
But
recording?
you can at the same time as well.
I don't know. Is she still here?
Who?
Yeah, I'm still here. I mean, I don't get on people's things and advertise, It's, it's kind of slimy to me. But if you want me to say anything, I can, because we are, I try to do historically accurate education in hoodoo, and I am, and